I'm not telling this story to be believed. I'm telling it because, to this day, I still can't explain what happened that night in the Flathead Forest, Montana. It happened when I was 26. I had planned a 3-day hunting trip with 2 of my college buddies, Kyle and Brandon. That winter in Montana was colder than usual. Snow had started falling heavy by mid-November, but we didn't let that stop us. We had been planning the trip for a month, heading deep into an isolated stretch of woods to hunt white-tailed deer. We set off from a trailhead near Glacier National Park with all our gear: rifles, sleeping bags, lanterns, GPS, a tent, and food supplies for 4 days. The first night, we planned to camp in the woods, then hike deeper into less traveled terrain the next morning. Everything was going smoothly until late that afternoon. While following an old, half-buried path through the snow, Kyle spotted something. An old wooden cabin tucked away behind a wall of pine trees, about 100 yards off the trail. It was small, maybe 12 by 20 feet, with weathered timber walls and a roof blanketed in snow. What struck me as odd was that there were no signs of recent activity. No footprints, no sled tracks, no path leading in or out. It looked like a forgotten shadow of something long abandoned. Brandon lit up with excitement. Perfect place to crash. Better than setting up a tent in this wind. I felt uneasy. I couldn't say why, but something about the cabin felt wrong. The door was barely closed, hinges rusted. I pushed it gently, and it creaked open, releasing a smell of damp rot and old ash. Inside was pitch black, but when I shone my flashlight around, I saw a stone fireplace in one corner, a dusty wooden table, and 2 decrepit bunk beds. There were scratches on the inside walls, long, thin marks, almost like fingernails. Kyle joked that maybe a bear had gotten in once. Brandon didn't seem fazed and stepped right in. We stay here one night, move on in the morning. Wind's picking up too fast. We lit a fire in the old hearth and rolled out our sleeping bags on the floor. The cabin warmed up quickly, and some of the tension in my chest eased. That night, we had jerky and bread, shared a few laughs, and talked hunting strategy. By 11 p.m., we were exhausted and ready to sleep. I woke up around 2 a.m. I don't know why, maybe instinct, but I knew something was wrong. There was no sound at all. No wind, no crackling fire. Not even Brandon snoring. Just silence. A silence so heavy it felt unnatural. I sat up and scanned the room. Kyle was a few feet away, turned on his side, back toward me. Brandon was still, wrapped tight in his bag. The fireplace had gone cold. Then I heard it. A soft, scratching noise, coming from the roof. I froze. It was faint, like claws dragging lightly across wood. Then, slowly, footsteps on the roof. I couldn't breathe. Someone, or something, was walking across the cabin roof, but how? We hadn't seen any tracks leading in. The roof was nearly 10 feet off the ground. I quietly nudged Kyle awake. He opened his eyes, and I gestured upward. Brandon was awake too now, eyes wide. All 3 of us sat in silence. The footsteps stopped, directly above us. And then, a heavy stomp shook the ceiling. It was like something had jumped down, or landed from above. The wooden walls trembled slightly. And then, nothing. No more sounds. Kyle clutched his rifle. I grabbed my flashlight. Brandon pressed his ear to the wall, trying to listen. We stayed like that until morning. When the sun rose, I was the first to step outside. Fresh snow had fallen during the night. And in that snow, I saw them. Footprints. Huge, long strides. Not human. But here's the part that haunts me. They only led away from the cabin. No prints led up to it. None on the roof. No approach. Just departure. Whatever had been on our roof had already been there before we arrived. Maybe it had been waiting. We left the cabin without a word. Forget the hunting plans. We hiked for nearly 8 hours straight through worsening snow back to the trailhead. I never went back to that forest, but sometimes, in my dreams, I still hear them. The slow, deliberate steps walking across the roof. My name is Marcus. I'm 31 and currently living in Oregon. I've never believed in ghosts. Never. I'm the type of person who only believes in what I can see, or at least I used to be. This happened last year, after I bought a small cabin-style house on the edge of the Willamette Forest. It was an old, one-story wooden house with a porch, a living room, kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. The price was shockingly cheap. Too cheap, because the previous owner wanted to sell quickly and move to Florida to live with his daughter. I didn't think too hard about it. I loved the peace and quiet, and this house was about a 15-minute drive from the nearest town, surrounded by pine trees and low hills. At first, everything was perfect. I repainted the walls, fixed up the interior, and set my desk by the window so I could write in the mornings with a view of the woods. It was exactly what I'd always dreamed of. My own space, away from the city, where I could finally focus on writing my first novel. But everything changed on the 5th night after I moved in. I remember it clearly. I was working late that night and didn't get to bed until almost 2 a.m. It was cold and damp outside, with thick fog clinging to the windows. I was sound asleep when I was startled awake by a noise. 3 knocks. I sat up instantly. The sound wasn't loud, but it was sharp and clear, like someone was knocking on the front door. I glanced at the clock. 3:07 a.m. I grabbed my flashlight and walked out into the living room. Through the window, I could only see the fog outside, glowing slightly in the porch light. I turned on the porch light and opened the door. No one was there. No footprints on the steps. No car. No sound. Just fog and silence. I stood there for a few minutes, then shut the door and told myself I probably imagined it. The next night, I went to bed a little earlier, but right at 3 a.m. I woke up again. This time, the knocking was coming from the bedroom window. I turned on the light and opened the curtain. Again, nothing. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. The knocking was rhythmic, deliberate, like someone knew exactly where I was. I started getting nervous. I checked the porch security camera, but it showed nothing at that time. No motion detected. Not a thing. I told my neighbor, Greg, a retired cop who lived about 300 meters down the road. He just frowned and said, "That house had stories." The last guy said someone used to knock on his door in the middle of the night too. Cops never found anything. I asked why he hadn't mentioned it before. He just shook his head and said, "Most people don't believe it until it happens to them." From that night on, I was woken up every night at 3 a.m. Sometimes the knocking came from the front door, sometimes the window. Once, I swear, it came from inside the bathroom wall. Like something was circling the house, trying to get my attention. I tried everything, leaving the porch light on all night, sleeping with a gun nearby, even setting up extra cameras around the house. But none of the footage ever caught anything. No person, no movement, no sound. I started thinking I was losing my mind until one night I'll never forget. I decided to stay up all night, sitting by the living room window with all the lights off, eyes on the front path. Time crept by slowly. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 2:30. I was nodding off when suddenly, 3 knocks behind me. I jumped up and spun around. No one was inside. I ran outside with my flashlight and scanned every direction, and I saw it. a figure standing at the edge of the woods. Tall, thin, completely motionless. I shouted, "Who's there?" No response. I aimed the flashlight directly at it, and it was gone. No figure, no trace. I checked the ground, no footprints, even though the soil was still damp from the earlier rain. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the lights on, but the knocking still came. Always 3 knocks, always at exactly 3 a.m., and always from a different part of the house. A week later, I invited my friend Aaron to stay a few days. I didn't say anything about the knocking. On the first night, around 3:10 a.m., he came into my room, pale and wide-eyed. "Dude, did you hear that?" I looked at him. "You heard the knocking, didn't you?" He nodded slowly. "At my window." Neither of us slept that night. The next morning, Aaron packed up and left without saying much. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I sold the house after just 3 months, taking a big loss. Now I live in a small apartment in the city. I haven't finished a book. But at least, no one knocks on my walls at 3 a.m. anymore. Still, every now and then, in the dead of night, I'll wake up out of nowhere. And I glance at the clock. 3 a.m. My name is David. I'm 28, and I live in Washington State. Every year, a few of my old college buddies and I take a multi-day camping trip. We're all office workers now, buried in deadlines and meetings. So trips like this are our way to breathe. Sit by the fire, drink some beers, joke around, and just forget the world for a while. Last year, we chose Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, a massive, dense forest that's less touristy than places like Mont Rainier. No cell signal, no Wi-Fi, no electricity, just trees, mountains, and silence. We found a remote spot on the map, an open clearing about 3 miles off the main trail, near a small stream and surrounded by thick pine woods. We arrived early Friday, pitched our tents, built a fire, and set up camp. The air was cool, the sky was clear. There wasn't a single soul around, just the birds and the rustling trees. It felt perfect. The first night went by without incident. We drank, laughed, told dumb stories. Around midnight, Dylan, my closest friend, and I walked off to the edge of the woods to pee. As we stood there, I heard something. Footsteps on dry leaves. I turned to Dylan. "Did you hear that?" He paused and listened, then shook his head. "Probably a squirrel or something." I nodded, but I wasn't convinced. The sound didn't feel like an animal. It was heavier, slower, like someone trying to walk carefully without making noise. We went back to the tent. I thought about bringing it up, but didn't want to sound paranoid. It was the second night when things really started to get strange. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound, something scratching at the side of my tent. I froze. I was lying right next to the tent wall. The only thing separating me from outside was thin nylon. The scratching came again. Then I heard footsteps slowly circling the tent, brushing against the fabric as they went. I sat up quietly and grabbed my flashlight. I unzipped the door and quickly shined the light outside. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just black woods and the faint trickle of the stream. I scanned the area for a while, then stepped out and checked around camp. No signs of anything unusual. The next morning, I told the group. They laughed. Dylan patted me on the shoulder and said it was probably just wind or a raccoon. But that night, things escalated. We were sitting around the fire when Evan, one of the guys, suddenly said, "Hey, did anyone leave a flashlight on out there? I just saw a flicker of light in the trees." We all turned and looked where he pointed. About 40 yards into the woods. Between the trees, there was a faint light. It blinked once, then vanished, like someone had a flashlight and was hiding it. We shouted, "Hello?" No answer. Dylan and I grabbed our lights and headed into the trees. But when we got there, nothing. No people, no footprints, no light source. That night, nobody really slept. I kept waking up, and at one point, close to 3 a.m., I swear I heard whispers. Not loud, just faint, like wind moving through the trees, but carrying syllables that felt deliberate, like someone was saying my name. David. I opened my eyes wide, heart racing. I sat up and listened. Everyone else was asleep. I pulled out my phone, no signal. I unzipped the tent door slowly and aimed my flashlight outside. That's when I saw it. A man standing about 20 meters away, completely still. No flashlight, no gear. Just standing there, head tilted slightly to one side, as if listening. I stumbled back and zipped the tent shut. I sat with my knees to my chest until daylight. In the morning, I told everyone exactly what I saw. Evan went pale. He said he'd also seen someone walking around the campsite just before sunrise, but assumed it was me. Dylan admitted he heard whispering too, but tried to ignore it. None of us wanted to stay another night. We packed up fast and left before noon. 2 weeks later, I found a post on Reddit. Someone who had camped in that exact area had experienced the same thing. A silent figure watching from the trees, flickering lights, whispering, scratching at tents. Nobody ever got a good look at him. Nobody ever caught him on camera. But there was one detail that matched exactly. He only ever appeared when it was just 4 or 5 campers, and the sky was about to turn stormy. Just like us. Now, when I hear a faint tapping at my window late at night, I wonder, did he follow me out of the forest? I went through a rough time after my divorce. I needed space, time to be alone, to clear my head. So I rented a small cabin deep in the national forest in Oregon, not far from a dry creek bed. There were no neighbors nearby, just trees, wildlife, and absolute silence at night. At first it was peaceful. No cars, no messages, no social media. I'd wake up with sunlight breaking through the canopy and fall asleep to the sounds of insects. I thought I'd found the perfect place to start over. That is, until the 6th night. I remember it clearly because I had gone on a long hike that day and was completely exhausted. I went to bed early. Sometime around midnight, I woke up to a sound, a soft clicking coming from outside. At first I figured it was just an animal, but the sound kept repeating, like someone lightly tapping at the back door. Not forceful, not trying to open it, just gentle, like tapping with fingernails. I got out of bed, grabbed my flashlight, and went over to the tiny window. I aimed the beam outside, but all I could see were shadows of trees and a blanket of mist. I stood there for a minute. Nothing moved. No sound. Eventually, I went back to bed. But just as I pulled the blanket over me, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow ones. Circled the cabin once. Then again. And then they stopped. Right next to the back wall. As if someone was pacing the perimeter, inspecting every crack and window. I froze. I couldn't breathe. I had no cell service, no internet, no neighbors. I was truly alone. I grabbed the axe I'd used for chopping wood and sat down right by the front door. I didn't turn on any lights, didn't make a sound. I just listened. And then, I heard breathing. No mistake about it. Someone was standing just outside the wall. I could hear shallow, steady breathing. Not like someone sneaking. More like someone wanted me to hear it. Then 3 soft knocks. Not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate. I almost dropped the axe because my hands were shaking so badly. I sat there for the rest of the night, staring at the door, completely still. I didn't sleep a second. Sometime near dawn, the sound stopped. The forest fell silent again. When daylight finally crept in, I opened the door and stepped outside. No sign of anything. Nothing out of place. Until I walked around to the back of the cabin. There in the wet leaves and soft earth were footprints. Bare feet. Human. Someone had walked around the entire cabin and had stood for a long time right outside the wall where I'd been sitting. I packed up that same morning and left without looking back. I returned the cabin key early and swore I'd never set foot in that forest again. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true horror every week. Stay safe and don't wander too far into the woods.